when you talk about putting the American worker first, there's a difference between doing that in word and then doing that in deed. One of the best ways that you can put the American worker first, simply raising the minimum wage. I think so if Donald Trump is willing to sign a pledge and say
that is not a proven fact of how to actually help the American.
That actually is.
No, it is not.
It helps the economy.
No, it actually does. Look at the states that actually are. You cannot sit there and raise the federal minimum wage when you're pushing business. We're already pushing businesses out of the United States.
From the city of Seattle, already raising the minimum wage to
ladies.
You see, as an African-American woman, I'm a beneficiary of affirmative action, both formal and informal programs. Perhaps I would not be sitting here today as a lawyer without it. Affirmative action is defined as any measure that permits the consideration of race, national origin, sex, or disability, along with other criteria, to provide opportunities to individuals who have either historically or actually been denied those opportunities, and or to prevent the recurrence of future discrimination. I find myself constantly engaged in discussions, arguments even, on whether America is post-racial or if people have arrived because we have our first black president, Barack Obama. His election demonstrates just how complicated America really is. Folks now have what's described as diversity fatigue, and support for affirmative action has waned at an all-time low. But have you looked around? Disparities for communities of color remain unreasonably high. There are grave disparities in unemployment, in wealth accumulation, representation in Congress, state legislatures, and even city councils. There are disparities in access to education, graduation rates, and education funding. On most fronts, people of color continue to lag behind the majority. So I often wonder, when listening to all the rhetoric about affirmative action, how can you have bootstraps to pull yourself up and you have no boots? How can you have equal access to education with little to no financial resources? How can you be judged by the content of your character, or in this instance, the content of your report card, when all they see is the color of your skin and the associated stereotypes? It's 2013, and we've yet to truly overcome.
Don, I hate these conversations because it forces Republicans to confront a reality that I believe, which is this president is racist. And whether that is a result of some type of financial elitism, whether it is because of being born on third base through white privilege, or whether it is a part of Steve Bannon's nationalism, this is why traditional Republicans struggle with his leadership. We can't forgive it. We can't normalize it. We can't suggest that he can be the figure of a party that we subscribe to. It's heartbreaking. It's not an easy conversation. It sucks. Everything about it sucks. This is the president, and he is the leader of the Republican Party, and he continues to peddle what is very clearly racist tendencies.
I just want to say, Congressman, like, I wish that the new members, the folks who have followed in your footsteps, could at least acknowledge that. Like, that's all so many of us are saying. And at this point, I'm emotional.
And let's fix it.
Because we cannot, like, it's like being constantly gaslit. We're constantly being told, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy. And I wish that somebody who's a colleague of mine, like Alice, could at least acknowledge that fact. Like, that is so frustrating. We're supposed to be talking about a 12-year-old boy who was just trying to deliver newspapers, and the police are called on him in Ohio, where Tamir Rice was killed in the same age. I want to be acknowledged and seen that this is not okay for our children. This is not okay for the future direction of this country. So I want to say, I commend you for saying what you said. It means the world to me.
Okay, quickly, Congressman, because
Alice needs to respond. Our president has given permission to that.
Yeah.
Economic segregation is a very real thing. It's at the root of these deadly confrontations, but law enforcement didn't create that economic segregation.
Okay.
The politicians who are now attacking law enforcement, like one of our fellow panelists, are the ones that created that and allow it to continue. Cops are there to make those neighborhoods safer, to try to make Black Lives Matter, to try to allow these kids to see a future where many don't.
Let Angela respond. I believe you were talking about Angela. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, I don't know what you're talking about. I have anything that was hate-filled or anything towards law enforcement. I worked for 40-plus members of Congress who have never done such a thing. So I reject that, and I hope that you start telling the truth on air, because we have an awesome responsibility to try to end some of this conflict.
Issue, Angela.
So that's. Did you say whatever?
And Angela, just to
anyway. So let me read this, because we had Donald Trump's statement, we had Hillary Clinton's statement, and we're talking about an entity that is supposedly anti-police. I hope it's not Black Lives Matter, because this is what Black Lives Matter said. They said black activists have raised the call for an end to violence, not an escalation of it. Yesterday's attack was the result of the actions of a lone gunman. To assign the actions of one person to an entire movement is dangerous and irresponsible. And to that end, I stand with them in solidarity.
Did you see the way the Black Lives Matter protesters
So what I think is very important is for you to understand, just like there are rogue cops who shoot black people for sport, there are rogue protesters. There are people who are
That's the most offensive thing I've ever heard on this network.
Well, you know what's more offensive than that to me is you calling an organization
we're mounting heads on the wall. That's what law
Angela,
enforcement
do you think
about.
it's inflammatory to say
lives.
that police officers shoot black people for sport?
No, I don't. I think that is exactly how I feel. And when you look across this country at the data, when you look at why these folks in the streets are angry, we have been saying this for years,
It's because of that rhetoric.
We've been saying
you're the one fomenting the violence that resulted in cops' deaths last night.
Let me finish my
Shame
point,
on
because
you.
Shame on you.
Why don't you?
So, Alice, are you on retainer? Like, last week we were sitting right here. We're not in the same place, but we were sitting right here on this show, and you did the same NRA public service announcement. Like, these folks are wrong as two left shoes. They are wrong. This isn't about the NRA standing up to protect people in Hollywood. This isn't about people who are out of touch. The NRA is out of touch. Like, if you don't know anything else right now, let's lay partisanship aside. Let's lay all of this aside and say, kids have died. The NRA is out of touch. They are in God's way. Common had it right. Right? Like, we didn't need anybody to tell us that. We don't need you on here telling us how amazing the NRA is. They're not. They're terrible. They are terrible. And it's high time that somebody that wasn't just standing up for the Second Amendment, and we don't even have time to unpack all of that, but like, it's high time that there is an organization that competes with them to say, we are not going to allow you to buy public service. That is not for sale. You owe everything to this country. You owe public servants. You have to protect your constituents. Like, please stop with, I can't. Not with the NRA.
Well,
I didn't mean to throw a tantrum. It's an accidental tantrum. But I just can't do the NRA PSA tonight. I can't do it. I can't.
Look, party that wants people
You're not
to...
the party of Martin Luther King.
Yeah,
you're
actually,
not the party
he was a
of Martin.
Republican.
No,
actually, do your history
my history is clear. Your history is ass backwards. What I will tell you is this, very plain and simple.
Okay.
Yes,
We're not
it is.
The Republican parties are not the ones that passed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment?
Let me help you. And the Republican Party is not the party of the 13th and 14th Amendment anymore. Your party is now one of oppression. Your party is the one that is pushing forth voter suppression legislation all throughout this country. Your party is the one that helps to ensure that Shelby versus Holder would gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Your party is the one in Pennsylvania where a GOP legislator said that these laws were put in place to ensure that Republicans would win back House, the Senate, the presidency. Let's be clear about what it is. Your party is living and thriving off of oppression.
Absolutely
Perhaps
not.
You were the party of anti-slavery and abolition back in the day, but that is not who you are today, sir. You're not going to do that today.
It's not like a one-off.
Well,
it seems to be a pattern.
Well,
Also said if he shot someone on Fifth Avenue, like, he's trafficked in violence too. So, Ben, we were at this new day at the beginning of the segment, and we didn't already we lost each other already. But I think the other issue that you have to deal with, right, is Brooke, in this tweet about Andrew, he doesn't mention Andrew. He loves to attack black people on Twitter, especially black men. He hit Don, he hit LeBron, now Andrew, who he's frightened by, and he traffics in the crime-ridden streets of Tallahassee. What? Has he ever been to Tallahassee? Maybe if he left the golf course in Florida, in southern Florida, he would see.
Ouch.
Like, what is he talking about?
Wait,
He's too busy vacationing.
Statistically,
Go ahead, Ben, close this out.
When the president talks about crime, and let's also be clear, it's not just he loves, and this is the part where I say, let's take a bigger look at this. The president attacks a lot of people that are white and also Republican. And if you don't believe me, look at the debate we've been having about John McCain.
Yes.
This
there are
last
numbers
week.
on this.
So
there are numbers,
let's not act like this president is an equal opportunity offender against people that he disagrees with, regardless of their political party, regardless of the race. So I don't think it has anything to do with race. I think it's a good talking point, but I don't think it's reality.
No.
Right.
There are numbers that
go.
CNN pulls. They're like, look at the numbers. It's disproportionately. He disproportionately attacks black people. Disproportionately. Those are the
We'll
facts.
leave it. We'll leave it. I felt the kumbaya in the beginning. I appreciated the
alarmed. We should be alarmed. We should be vigilant. We should be out there getting these people.
Angela Rye, let's bring you in. Your take on what Jeffrey's saying here and what the president said.
So, Jeffrey, first of all, he didn't say do not be alarmed by the attack. He said do not be alarmed by the number of police officers, law enforcement on the streets. So I think before we can have an argument about Donald Trump's alleged good intentions, we should at least be speaking from the same set of facts. What's very important right now, and I think Congressman Kildee a couple of segments earlier said it best, this is not political at this point anymore. What Donald Trump continues to do is more than dangerous. It's causing a divide globally. It's not just here nationally anymore. We are in the middle of recovering from a terrorist attack with our allies. Jeffrey, it's essential that we operate as such. It is problematic for Donald Trump to use this as a wedge, to use this as a distraction because of this James Comey hearing. He's using this to pump fear in people's hearts and minds about Muslim people. There's a woman that got beaten, her face entirely swollen because of the type of hate that he pushes out. His travel ban that he signed on to, that now he's blaming the Department of Justice for watering down, he signed it. He's using this attack in London to push this travel ban that is hateful and wrong and unconstitutional.
Angela, so when Barack Obama was pushing concern about these same countries that President Trump is pushing, then President Obama was hateful.
All right, hang on one second. This is not during the Obama administration. We're talking about the Trump administration.
Leaders, to these leaders, to get your congregations to vote or there will be violence. Is the president engaging in classic fear-mongering here, Steve?
Well, look, I don't know why he says that there'd be violence because of the Democrats winning. I do think he's correct, though, in pointing out that political violence, unfortunately, is ascendant in America, and it's active on both the right and the left, yet mainstream media seems to only care about it when it emanates from somebody on the right rather than people like Antifa, who, by the way, even that name I hate to use because they act a lot like fascists for people who are supposedly anti-fascists. All they try to do is suppress free speech, is intimidate people, is harass the police, many of whom happen to be minorities, by the way. So those are the tactics of Antifa, and they are fascist tactics, in fact. So he's correct to point that out. I don't know. I'm a bit puzzled as to why he says if the Democrats take the House, for example, that means Antifa will rise further or will use violence more so. So that part, I don't agree with, but I certainly agree with him that political violence is never acceptable. And we hear a lot of folks on the left make excuses for Antifa while they properly will assail the racist thugs in a place like Charlottesville who killed that young woman. While they'll go after them, they won't then use that same lens of criticism or that same view of criticism of leftist violence, which is totally unacceptable as well.
So Angela, your face says everything, but, television is about sound, too, so go ahead, speak your mind.
Wow. I guess I would love to hear from Steve. How many Antifa incidents is he aware of? How many Antifa incidents do you know about, Steve? Okay. Well, while
quite
you
a few.
think
Do you want
about
me to
it,
go
let
through
me
the
just
list?
say.
Do you want me to go through the list? Because I'll tell you one of the first ones.
No, I don't want you to
you
go
asked me a
through
question.
a list.
You asked me a
love
question.
for you. Yeah, and
How
the
about
question
Occupy
was,
ICE?
can you provide
Occupy
a
ICE,
number?
which they did in Portland.
Can you
where they
provide a number?
constantly
Okay.
harassed
Well, instead,
black
let me
and
help you
Latino
because I'm
One at
not
a
going
time,
to let
please.
you
One at a time.
filibuster.
Well, don't ask me the
my point.
question if you don't want to hear the answer, Angela.
I'm sorry that you didn't want to answer it the way that I hoped that you would, which was honestly, and that was
that I don't
a
answer the
number.
way you want.
So
That's how the
since-
left
so
operates,
since
isn't it?
you-
If I
yeah.
answer the way you want, you're
That's
tolerant
fine.
of my view.
Yes, I'm on
Otherwise,
the
you're
left.
not tolerant.
Okay, let's
That's
not get
right, I'm on
Because that
sidetracked
is
here. Go
liberal
ahead, please.
intolerance.
So
Please go
here,
on.
okay, that's fine. It's fine. And you have just exhibited exactly what's wrong with this country right now. So we can stand on polar opposites or we can call for human decency. And what we know regularly is the one with the bully platform that consistently urges violence, that consistently trolls women of color and people of color on Twitter, is the one with the bully pulpit, the bully himself, Donald Trump. So I think before you go after the ghost and the demonic left, you all's favorite boogeyman, right? You should chin check your president on what he is regularly doing, and that is using his language irresponsibly and calling for violence on people, or at least, you know, kind of teasing it out there that there will be a violent uprising. That's dangerous rhetoric.
I think that the bigger issue that I have, speaking of having no chill, is that if this would have been under the Obama administration, there would be no end to this. Barack Obama had to be the next best thing to Jesus. And here we are, just 2 months in and some change, and there is issue after issue. Maybe it's not Russian collusion, maybe it's collusion with the Intel Committee chair, but it's highly problematic.
Angela, first to you. Tell me what you were getting at.
Sure, I think it speaks for itself. This president has been in turmoil since the campaign. He talked about grabbing women by their private parts. This is a man who, let's put the shoe on the other foot. Barack Obama, a black man in this country running for president with not one, not two, but 3 baby mothers. Let's, put the shoe on the other foot. Someone who took a loan from their father that they call a small loan of $1 million. Let's talk about all of those things. Someone who discriminated against people who were trying to just find spots in his housing facilities. Someone who took out full-page ads calling for the death of 5 young black and brown boys. If Barack Obama would have done any of that, Brooke, he would have never even made it to the general election, and that is the point. We're talking about a double standard. We're talking about lowering a bar. Barack Obama hurdled every bar that was put in front of him. When Michelle Obama talked about going high, when they go low, they did it at every turn. This is a woman who was called an ape, who they put pictures up of Barack Obama looking like a monkey. These are the people I'm talking about. They hurdled everything that came their way, every obstacle. And this man, it's asinine to even think that this man is now in the White House. Here we are in the middle of an investigation, but Hillary Clinton's emails. So yeah, I mean, it's very frustrating. And I'm tired of people telling me that black people are beneath a standard when we have to be twice as good all the time. And that is why I said I'm not interested in having a dialogue with someone like Joe, who has demonstrated a propensity towards bigotry. And he did that on Twitter yesterday in 140 characters or less.
Whew. Hey, Brooke, I apologize, Brooke, that you invited a bigot on your show. Look, my disagreement with Angela had nothing to do.
Wait, are you now calling Angela?
No, he's a bigot. He's apologizing for himself.
No. I'm sorry that Angela feels like I'm a bigot, and I apologize that you invited me, a bigot, onto your show. I know you wouldn't do that knowingly.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't need an apology. I brought you on because of this conversation that you all, that happened over Twitter. I'm just trying to understand. I wanted to understand where Angela was coming from her initial comment. I want to understand why you had such a problem with what Angela said, and you took to Twitter and you let everyone know about it. I want to understand what your issue is with that.
And Brooke, thanks. My disagreement had nothing to do with Trump. When Angela was making her case, she said that Barack Obama somehow had to live up to this perfect Jesus Christ standard that no other president had to live up to. My disagreement, Brooke, was about that, because I find that laughable. And it's got nothing, again, to do with race. Never in our country's history have we had a president so coddled and pampered and protected by the media like Barack Obama.